Good evening, everybody. And it's a very warm welcome to you all. I think that's how Alec would normally start, and he would normally making this introductory speech. But Alec's at the tail end of COVID at the moment, so rather than pass it on to you all tonight, he decided to stay at home. But he's fine, and I'm sure he'll be back to manage the team on Friday night. So we've arrived at a very exciting time for Edinburgh Monarchs, and we're going to give you a bit of background as to what exactly that means a little bit later. We're a club of very long history. In 1948, the Monarchs started at Old Meadowbank. I can't quite remember that first era of Old Meadowbank, but can remember a couple of years in 1966 and 1967, before the club then moved on to Coatbridge for a couple of years, and then we had, 8 years without any speedway until Powder Hall came on the scene, a stadium we all loved and a very, very nice place to be. And that became by far the longest home of Edinburgh Monarchs until that disappeared, and we'll miss out the awful year at Glasgow and move on to Armadale, which has become our longest home throughout the whole history of Edinburgh Monarchs, 25 years this year, and the most successful time we've ever had as a team, winning many league titles and cups during that period of time. But everything comes to an end, and anybody that looks closely at Armadale knows that it's falling down. We prop it up every week and do our very, very best to keep it going, but the time's come to move on to much, much better things. We've been searching for years, to be honest, and have come up with many plans, none of which have come to fruition so far, none of which I don't think we've announced before, except maybe the field across the road from Armadale Stadium. But tonight we're going to show you what our plans are for Dean's Industrial Estate, which is that way, I think. That way. See, that's when you spend your whole life in Edinburgh, what do you know about West Lothian? M8 Junction 4, turn right, and that's about it for West Lothian for me. It's really my younger son Gordon that's been hounding the life out of people to take us this far, and I'll pass over to Gordon now and he'll tell you a story.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's great to see you all here. Thank you for coming along, and hopefully we've got something very exciting to share with you, which obviously we've got a bit of a preview on last week, but we've got a lot more detail to share with you tonight, so that will be very exciting. So obviously last week on Wednesday morning we broke the news of West Lothian Community Stadium, which is going to be the next home of Edinburgh Monarchs Speedway, and hopefully perhaps our best ever home. That's the aim that we're going into this with, and that's what we're looking forward to. So West Lothian Community Stadium, we believe it will be perfectly located within West Lothian. It's here where the club will thrive, both on and off track, in a way that we've not been able to within the current home. Certainly off track at Armadale we've been limited, so we're looking to develop the opportunities off track much broader and reach out into the community in a way that we're only really just getting started with a lot of what we're doing at Armadale. So some of you may have seen this if you were there on Friday night. Let's take a look at West Lothian Community Stadium. So this is it. This is West Lothian Community Stadium. It will feature an internationally certified, FIM approved 260 metre speedway track. That will be capable of hosting the very best of World Speedway events. They'll have the youth training track in the middle for the Monarch Speedway Academy, which is going from strength to strength. You can see there the grandstand will have 1,500 seats. Spectators will be seated in comfort, looking down onto the action with an uninterrupted view, no floodlight pylons or anything like that getting in the way of the viewing. It will be a terrific view for everyone. There'll be high quality food and drink options for everyone to enjoy, and there'll be luxurious hospitality lounges at the back of the stand so that Monarchs can better reach out into the business community than we're capable of doing right now. These spaces will also be multi-use, multi-purpose space, so our community initiatives will be able to take place in these spaces. There'll be a more immersive match day experience with the large LED video screen will be on the back straight, and state-of-the-art LED floodlights, and all of this with a speedway track that's perfectly designed for the needs of modern speedway bikes as they have evolved in recent years, so that we'll see the very best racing on the track, which is what it's all about. So where is it? Well, we've said it's at Dean's Industrial Estate in Livingston, so we'll zoom in and see where exactly that is. So it's on the western edge of Livingston, as we'll know. It's junction 3A is perhaps the best way to reach it, and easily accessible from Bathgate and Livingston. So this site was selected after an extensive search, working with West Lothian Council, and indeed having talks with all local councils to see if there are any opportunities out there. And that process has gone on for, well, a lot of years now, in honesty. And it's led us to this point where we've found a site that we're really excited by the prospects of what we'll be able to do here. A big advantage of this is that there's no local residents nearby, so we won't be, not that Speedway is a big disruption, but that possibility is removed because housing is quite far away. There's a railway line, motorway, it's under the flight path, so all these things contribute to make this a really good site for Speedway, which will be able to allow us to expand what we're able to do in terms of training, all that kind of stuff that we'd like to do more of. So as we can see there, West Lothian Community Stadium. As we say, it's about 5 minutes to drive from junction 3A, or slightly longer from junction 3, but very accessible all round. Just very accessible from Livingston and Bathgate. And once you get there, if you're coming by car, there'll be plentiful car parking both on site and in the estate. We'll be looking at about 150 spaces on site, a further 500 spaces, or even more than that really, just a couple of minutes walk away, as well as lots of other parking in the general estate. Other options to get there: public transport is not too far away. Just at the end of the estate, there's plenty bus options, about a 10-minute walk away, and slightly further afield, it's just 30 minutes to get to Livingston North train station on foot, or about a 10-minute cycle. So all of these options are things that we're looking at to improve, so that it's accessible as possible to get to the site. That's a key driver. We want it to be as easy as possible for people to get to the stadium and enjoy everything that we do there. So looking at a timeline, this is something we've spoken briefly about, but the aim is very much to be up and running for next season, so that's spring 2023. That's the aim, that's been our plan all along, and that's what's been developing in recent months as we've been pressing on with the project. So where we're at, coming into early autumn in a few months, so by that point we'll secure the site and planning permission will be granted, so that work will begin, or is already underway, and that will come to a conclusion in early autumn. By mid-autumn, work will begin on site, so that will initially be the groundworks, everything else, and from there we'll start to build. By mid-spring 2023 we'll start to near completion of construction, and the track will be in place and we'll be ready to go on site or in our new home, and Edinburgh Monarchs Speedway will commence the 2023 Speedway season at West Lothian Community Stadium, so that will be in the late spring next year. So we'll deliver, we believe, a high quality stadium that will offer a terrific spectator experience. That's something that we've not really been able to do at Armadale, as everyone will know the limitations of both our situation there and the stadium itself. So from a blank canvas here, that's what we're shooting at, a very, very good spectator experience, something that everyone will thoroughly enjoy coming along to see the action and also to be in the stadium. So our plans will be implemented in a phased manner, which we've spoken of briefly. You might have seen that in the press. So there's a plan behind getting to this point where this stadium will exist that is broken down into stages. So they're kind of bite-sized chunks for us to get to. Much of that phasing is based on funds available. So as the money comes in to support the development, we'll be able to take the next steps. And ultimately, the quicker we can source the funds, the quicker we can get to this end result. So that's what we're striving towards now, and the talks are ongoing to secure funding, and we're looking at any and all sources of that. But what we can say is that for the very initial stage of the project, which we're looking at sort of a basic model of Speedway Stadium. We do almost have the funds in place for that. We're quite close to that. So that means for spring next year, we've got those funds to get us to a point where we can get the Monarchs on track. It might not look like this in that initial phase. In fact, it won't look like this in the initial phase, but that's what our fundraising drive is for now, to get to this point as quickly as we can, so that we can have the best experience possible in the quickest time. So that's where our call comes out, and it has been a call over the past week or so, looking for any funding. So that can be from the business community, individuals, supporters, anyone that can fund a project. We're happy, or we're available to talk at any time, very willing to look at all options to put the funds together. So ultimately we want to move through the phases as quickly as possible, so that this is the view that we can all be enjoying in the near term. So West Lothian Community Stadium, I suppose the clue is in the name, as we'll be looking to expand our community arm of the club, which we have been doing in recent years. There's some schemes on the screen here that aren't new. Monarchs Speedway Academy is very much up and running now and successfully drawing in kids from across the community. Monarchs Community Initiative is going from strength to strength this season, perhaps slightly in the background, but that's inviting community groups in from the outside in to enjoy a night of Speedway. And it's a really fantastic initiative that, well, it's been fully subscribed this season, so that's something we'll look to expand. And there's other things. RUTS, Rural and Urban Training Scheme, is a locally based organisation that offers training and development of young people, to bring them, perhaps those that fell out of traditional education, they bring them back on board. So we're talking to RUTS, very positive talks with RUTS to bring them on board with the stadium. And there's other things we're looking at: the Monarchs Innovation Centre, Sporting Memories Groups, a Speedway Museum. All of these things are to some extent being spoken about at the moment. So as we spoke about previously, in a phased approach to the stadium, that will be slightly the case with our community initiatives as well. There'll be a phased approach to bring on board partners in the community to bring all these things into life. And a lot of these things will be very much based on the platform of developing skills development, training, employability. That's really the core focus of these, or a lot of these community initiatives to start with, but we're looking at working with all kinds of partners to deliver as wide a mix as possible, so we can reach out into the community across lots of touch points. So we spoke of funding, and what's not appeared so far is the options for supporters to get involved. So we've been working these up, and we're now in a position to announce how supporters can get involved. We've got a fantastic supporter base at the Monarchs. It's been proven over very many years, supporting the club in all kinds of ways, and hopefully this is the next step. There's lots of different options, so everyone can get involved, and it works across all kinds of amounts of money that will go into the stadium to develop it as quickly as we can. So with debentures, there's 4 options, very creatively named: bronze, silver, gold and platinum. So starting at bronze, £2,000 for that brings 3 years of benefits. Silver is 5,000 with 5 years of benefits. Gold is 10,000 for 10 years, and platinum's 20,000, bringing lifetime benefits. Now, I'll not go into all the benefits, but we do have brochures here tonight, which we'll make available at the end. The benefits we speak of, all of these include gold membership, gold plus membership, options to have your own seat selected, various other things, but the brochure says everything you need to know about that. So those are debentures. They come with, as I say, an ongoing benefit structure. But we do have other options, which we're calling crowdfunding. So crowdfunding options, they're an excellent way to get involved with the Monarchs. These benefits won't be on an ongoing basis, they'll be on a shorter term basis, but delivering very worthwhile benefits that will bring in the funding for the club. As I said, we'll also have 4 packages for these. These have more creative names. We actually put some effort into these. So secure our stand, £1,000 for that package. Light it up, which you might be able to guess what that will go towards for the £500 option. Take your seat, again that's a bit of a giveaway in the name, £250, and write your name, £100. So with these packages and with all the other packages, it will come with a lifetime of having your name recognised within the stadium. So your contribution, or anyone's contribution to the Monarchs securing this new stadium, will be recognised for as long as the stadium is standing. So that's a key part of all of these packages. But there's lots of other benefits that that come with this admission and various other things across all of the packages. So that brings us to a rapid fire look through West Lothian Community Stadium. There is lots to be excited about with this. It's a brilliant site. We've got a fantastic vision, I believe, for what we can achieve here. And I think we've done some good work for the club, and the club has always put a strong team on track. Where Armadale Stadium has perhaps lacked in the past, we believe West Lothian Community Stadium will bring us into the future and deliver a fantastic home for the Monarchs in the long years ahead. So now we move into what might be the more interesting part of the night, which is the question and answer session. So we'll answer questions about anything to do with this stadium, the funding, anything at all. We're happy to answer any questions that you've got. And if anyone's keen enough to shout out, we'll get straight to it. Yeah, so the stadium, there are two approaches to the ownership of this stadium. One is that, so there's two options. It's available for lease and it's available for sale. So ultimately the control will be with the Monarchs. That's the aim going forward. The key aim of going into the stadium is to secure the future of the club in the long term. So our ultimate aim is to be owners of the site, owners of the stadium, and that's what we're striving towards. That's the option we want to achieve. Yeah. Yeah, so we are looking at options on that. Our key option, our number one choice, is to be in this stadium, and currently we're not foreseeing anything that would be a huge obstacle to that. There are hurdles to overcome, but our number one aim is to be in this stadium for next season. The key option to help achieve that will be to perhaps look at pushing the start of the season back slightly. So we say late spring, we're probably talking end of May. That really gives us sort of, well, almost 2 full months beyond what a traditional start of the season might be. Gives us a bit of better weather, which will help with some aspects. So that's our number one focus. Given the current structure of British Speedway, there might be opportunities that might even be able to push back slightly further into the summer and still achieving what we need to do. Obviously having the advantage of being able to run 7 days a week on this is the aim. That means that we can catch up on fixtures if we need to, but that's what we're aiming at. Any other questions out there? Yes. So, yeah. So phase one, what will phase one look like? I don't know if you've ever been to Redcar, or perhaps had been to Redcar at the outset. So essentially what Redcar was a very good speedway track. That's how they started it out. So they plotted down a great speedway track, put in all the essential facilities, and the spectator facilities were more temporary in nature, so scaffolding to create good raked spectator standing accommodation, toilet blocks, that type of thing brought in onto site. So that would be very much phase one. If we couldn't raise the funds, or perhaps if time was against us, then phase one would be a brilliant speedway track and good accommodation, but perhaps not seated at the outset. But there's still temporary options on seating and everything like that, so we wouldn't rule out seating it from the outset. Yeah, so that's the question on the bidding process for the site in terms of current owners and how we get hold of it. So the site is owned by West Lothian Council. They've identified it, and I've worked with them to identify the site. So how the council work is that they've got their protocol that they need to go through, which means that the site goes on the open market. So currently you can look it up on the website and find, or online, you'll find this site for sale or lease currently. So the bidding process is that it's an open bid. Anyone can buy the site theoretically, but it won't necessarily go to the highest bidder. There's more of a detailed process to it than that, whereby essentially all bids go in front of the council and everyone states their case to see who's got the best case. It's not necessarily the biggest amount of money that will sway it for the council. There's the community benefit that any project might bring. All of these things will hopefully bring the stadium into our control. The closing date for that is 28th of July, which makes this quite a key month for spreading the message to get this site secured. Well, it is an industrial site, so there's always a chance that there is some interest out there. There's rumoured to be perhaps a couple of interested parties. There's no way of knowing for certain, and we may never know. All we'll know is that we get the site, which is what we believe will happen, or we don't. But we're stating the case to the council. As I say, it's been an extensive search for a lot of years. The council have been aware of that search for a lot of years. That if the Monarchs are going to continue, particularly in West Lothian, if it's not on this site, and if it's not now, so if it's not here, then where, and if it's not now, then when. So that's the case that we're putting in front of the council. They're very aware of our timeline and our deadlines, so we're hoping to motivate them to back our case in all cases. Yeah, so that's something we're working up at the moment, speaking with all kinds of suppliers, contractors, everything else to deliver each part of the stadium. Everything in this plan, we've spoken to someone who can deliver it, so they're all aware and on board with the timeline. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, great question. So are there services on the site? Yes. Being in this type of situation, in this scenario, industrial estate, it has got a lot of facilities, a lot of services on site. So there's this road here, and there's a road here. So they already exist, and within those roads are everything we need. So power, water, gas if we wish, sewage, drainage. It's all to the edge of the site, ready to be connected up. Yes. Yep. So currently we're speaking largely with a speedway track. It's quite a basic construction process. It's largely similar to what a lot of general contractors can put in. A hardcore base with a shale surface compacted on top, and then the racing surface on top of that, again shale. So we've got Alan Doc Bridget on board. He's giving us advice. He's obviously retired currently. He's been keen to be sitting at the edge of the fence, standing over the fence as he puts it, guiding us along the way. It's something that he always wished to do, to build a track. It didn't come within his working time, but he's very keen and is involved in the process. And there's a couple of other speedway related parties that are... Yep, absolutely. We'll be bending Kenny's ear. We have spoken generally to him a bit. And there's a few other speedway people who have been involved in building tracks that will soak up as much knowledge as we can to make it the best it can be. Yeah. Any other? Yes. Yeah, that's right. So question was, what race night will we have? Friday is our preference, and no reason to change that. It will be Friday night racing at West Lothian Community Stadium. Yes. Yep. So the fate. Yeah. So the phased approach is largely dictated by funding rather than timeline. I believe, and if we can pull the funding together, we can deliver this for spring next year. The style of construction that we're looking at is largely prefab to an extent, or mechano type bolting together. So it's a lot of off-site work to put it to construct it, and then it's brought onto site and dropped into place. Phases, we have broken it down into 3 phases. So to call the phases in speedway terms, the phase 1 would be a red car style, as we've spoken of. Phase 2, if anyone's been to Leicester, it might be more akin to Leicester, so some seating, standing, and more permanent facilities there. And phase 3 is what we're calling Bellevue Light, which is this. So those are what will happen across those phases is that they won't be as defined as that. They'll kind of merge and blend into one. Some things might be more achievable or more sensible to do it at the outset, and we'll do those things first. So it won't be 1, 2, 3. It'll be, this is the stadium kind of thing. So yeah. What is the figures? Yeah. So at the end of the day, we're here and there's a couple of prices, but all ingredient. Yeah. So what is phase 1? What is it costing? Yeah. What is the lease cost? Because obviously they have to be open if it's up for bid. So I'll just answer your second question first, and then we'll go a bit more into depth on the funding and the funds needed. So yeah, absolutely. Drainage is very high on the agenda. If anyone's ever seen me on track with either a brush or an air blower, I never want to have that again. So it's very high on the agenda. The track itself will have a good degree of banking on it, and on the inside line we're planning extensive drainage. The site itself, actually, there's a natural drain in the field here, and the whole site sort of drains north to south into the other side of the railway kind of thing. So yeah, drainage very high on the agenda, and we'll put general plans in place. Obviously weather can be problematic, but everything we'll do will hopefully avert it as best we can. The second question, so what are the figures, what funds do we need? So phase one, obviously things can move around. It's a fast moving area where costs are moving quite quickly at the moment in construction. So phase one, looking at that very simple red car model, or slightly above red car we'll call it, is about 500,000. So we're not there. You'll have seen we've spoken about being close with funding. So we're looking at something, or where we are at the moment is below that, a good chunk below that, because we'll put in something that is essentially red car. That would cost less than that. But in that phase one, we want to do something slightly better than red car was. So more concrete for people to walk on, and better lighting, that kind of thing, basic facilities. So phase one, 500,000 roughly. Phase two, with that Leicester approach, as I say, the grandstand would start to form in that kind of budget. We'd be looking at about £1 million, something like that. That would get us very far down the track of a good facility. Phase three, delivering this in its entirety and getting all the finishing touches done as we wish, about 1.5 to 2 million. That's the amount. Yeah. Yeah. So to do Armadale, and to bring it up to a standard, let's call it red car-esque, that phase one kind of approach, we'd be looking at more than it would cost to build this. That's the figure. The land is significantly more because of it has planning permission for residential. Although it's termed as planning in principle, that actually means the decision is taken, it will be housing. Then to ultimately achieve housing, they just need to complete a few or approve the exact plans of what the houses the units will look like, but it does have planning for housing. So that whether there's space in the schools or not, or space in the doctors or not, it doesn't matter now, because it's got that permission, and that rockets the price. It probably put Armadale's price up by at least double, and it's a competitive field at the moment. So that, and building from what is a situation where you're having to clear the site, work around a lot of issues, and then at the end of the day, if we did do Armadale, we still would have our hands tied by the planning permission and ability to use the site. So there's a lot of things that would deter us from doing it at Armadale. This is, well, I feel across every point this is better. Okay. Yes. Yep, that's the plan. Everything that we wish to take away from Armadale will start moving as quickly as we can. There is a date that we actually need to be out of Armadale, which is not long after the season, so everything that we wish to take with us will be moved as soon as the season finishes. Yes? Well, I wouldn't say no curfew, just because the nature of anything is there will probably be a curfew. But we're talking a curfew that will never really be touching, 10:30, something like that. Some time that we all wish to be in our bed and not standing on the terraces. That's the plan, certainly. Yeah. As mentioned, the housing estates, about a kilometre this way, you start touching into Bog Hall, and about a kilometre that way, you start touching into Deans itself. So those are the nearest extensive housing developments. About 600 metres this way, you come into a couple of cottages, 2 or 3 cottages. But to put into context what however many metres from a Speedway stadium means, Leicester have permission to run 7 days a week. Their nearest houses, I believe, are between 300 and 400, maybe 500 metres, that kind of distance. So in this site, we're further away than anything than Leicester already have permission to run all the time. So, and as I mentioned, the flight path is bang overhead, so they're making more noise than us long into the night. So, yeah, we believe it's a good site for all those reasons. Yes. Yeah, that's a good question. I won't speak for the council. It's not our place. But yeah, we've spoken with the council. We have gone through a pre-planning application process whereby they look over broadly what we want to do. They don't say yes or no at that point, but they say to achieve planning, you'll need to do X, Y, and Z. So we have that report. We know exactly what we need to do, and we're moving through that process currently, and we'll accelerate till the application goes in. And then from that point of the application going in, the council guidelines on it will be 8 weeks from the application being delivered to a decision being given. And that's the timeline on that. Yes.
We're being called the West Lothian Community Stadium. Are the council going to help with finance at all?
So as everyone knows, governments in these times are stretched across many fronts. So there won't be direct funding in any manner to the Monarchs on this site. There are other avenues that they can perhaps support us. We're exploring those with the council and many other bodies to achieve as much funding as possible. That might be through supporting the academy, who will have certain demands on the site beyond what the Monarchs might have, and all those funding options are being looked at, but no direct funding from government to the club, certainly. Yeah, sorry. Yes. Yep, absolutely, and that's something that we'll probably bring forward more direct suggestions on what can be done. But if anyone lives in West Lothian, absolutely contact your councillor straight away, by phone, email. They're probably in recess, so we won't be able to do meetings, but in any way that you can talk to a local councillor, do so. Say that, hey, so-and-so councillor, have you seen the plans for West Lothian Community Stadium? It's got a lot going for it, keeps the Monarchs in the area, it's has fantastic community benefits with it. So all these points, if you put that to the councillor, that would help. And in the next week or two, we'll bring forward some more specific points that could perhaps be raised. But certainly start the conversation if anyone can. Yep. Yeah, so could we look for sponsorship options on the stadium? Absolutely. Doesn't need to be called this. We might look at that slightly further down the line once we've pushed the community case of it, but absolutely that is another funding option that we're looking at to help bring in some funds. Yes. So in terms of purchasing or leasing or actual security, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so it's remote to an extent, but so up here is the shoe company's head office is right here, and there's some existing units on the estate. So this presence naturally brings a presence of CCTV, various other presence on the site, which will enhance the security of it. But there'll obviously be a fence around it. We'll look at CCTV options and everything to make sure the site's safe during the week. Yes. Yep. Absolutely. Yep. Obviously, plans can change, but behind here, these spaces are accessible car parking spaces, which will then give level access into through the turnstile area. And then, as I say, this might change to an extent once we get to it. But if we achieve this aim in this structure, we'd be looking at some kind of wheelchair or accessible seating up the back of the stand here with a good view right down onto everything. That's the aim in this, but even at the outset in phase 1, it will be more wheelchair accessible than Armadale currently is. Toilets and everything else will be there. Yeah, so ultimately it's a question of funding. Our key driver, I should mention that in our funding options earlier, that doesn't necessarily include the purchase of the site. So at that bottom end that we're looking at, for example, the red car model that we can achieve with funds that we've currently got, that would be looking down the lease option. We already know from experience at Armadale that we can pay a rental on a site at an affordable level, and we believe it'd be looking at something similar here. So we've got a business model to support a lease model, which obviously reduces that capital cost at the outset. But the aim is to secure the site, to own the site. That's our wish. That's what we want to do. But in saying that, the lease option isn't the worst, because it's not a developer, it's not a whoever, it's the council, and it'll be a long-term lease, and it might not be the most popular thing to throw out a popular local sports team. So if it had to be a lease with the council, it wouldn't be the end of the world, and it might get us going at the outset. But if it's a purchase option, that's what we're really wanting to do. Yes. Yeah, so initially we'd be looking at having the majority of the spectator facilities on one side. That's because of a couple of factors. It does allow the layout of the site to be achieved in the best possible way and in the most timely manner at the outset, delivering the best facilities in a compact space rather than trying to spread our resources over the whole site. There is expansion space in future, should we wish to, or hopefully when the crowds are selling it out every night, that will expand all the way around and it'll be like Torrun. But better. But yeah, at the outset, on one side, it just makes the most sense financially and for the time manner. Yeah, our ultimate aim is to have seats only, but that's not to say that that's what we'll do. The theory behind that is that we can sell the experience to new spectators, and we don't want to ruin anyone's experience currently. So there probably will be standing, certainly in the initial phases, and we'll see. It'll be a conversation. We'll reach out to our supporters and say, what do you want? Do you want some standing? How do you want it to look? Where do you want it to be? So it's not a cut and dried, we're doing this or that. It'll be more of a process to it. But certainly having a good chunk of seating, we think, will enhance our ability to sell it to new spectators. It just means they've got that kind of assurance. They know they've got their ticket, they go sit in their seat. The experience is more straightforward for them. Yeah. Yeah, that is true. And yeah, we'll be looking at ways that we can make it a good experience all round for all the family. Yes. The seated stand itself, or the lounge? Yeah. So the hospitality and lounge and everything will really be transformed into something completely new. Depending on funding initially, we wouldn't be looking to transplant any parts from Armadale, really. If we can, we're looking to go new and something that will last for a long time. Those are the two factors with it. But in terms of names of suites and lounges, yeah, absolutely. The name itself might come with us, the George Hunter name, and be adapted and adopted by a new lounge here. Yes. Yeah. So how close are we to phase 1 funding? I say we're very close to a point where we can build a speedway track. That would be on the lease basis, because that reduces that capital requirement. And essentially there wouldn't be much beyond that. So that's close to where the point is, and we need that extra push to get the spectator facilities nailed down in the first phase. Second question was, sorry. Yeah, sorry. So yeah, so if people are putting money in, and if something falls down, if we don't clear one of the hurdles, what will happen to the funds? Yeah. So this will again be a bit of a consultative approach to how people feel about that, and it will be stated before any money is pledged or taken exactly how that will look. The nature of the project does mean that some funds will need to be used for reports on the site, for planning, for putting the application in itself for some legal advice on different parts of the site investigations, things that are essentially speculative. The costs go out with any certainty. So what, and I say this will be nailed down before any money is pledged or taken, but there may be a percentage that has to go to those costs, otherwise we kind of don't get anywhere. We're not looking to steal anyone's money or take it down the casino, but there'll be that'll be clearly laid out. There won't be any hidden anything in that, so it'll be clearly said what will happen to the money. But ultimately, if it all fails, the majority of the money will go back to those who pledged it. Yes. Yeah. So have we tried lottery funding? Lottery funding is quite specific now. It's no longer where it might have been in the past, where it's millions handed out to sport because it's sport. Certainly the structure of the club would not make it an easy case to get funding. Certainly if we're looking at numbers, all lottery funding for a sports facility is handled through Sport Scotland. The maximum funding that they can offer is £100,000. So that would be a very helpful amount towards this, but wouldn't move us all the way down the path. Ways to really get that funding, the academy would be one great way that we can use the academy to bring in funds. So that's something we'll be looking at achieving and helping us on the way. But yeah, we're looking at all options, certainly any kind of grants that might be able to help, we're looking at them. Any other questions out there? Yeah. Ultimately, everything that we would like to build here, we'd like to kind of have a dual purpose so that we can bring more funding into the club. So nights like this, we'd like to have a space on the site for them, but that might be a latter phase, perhaps. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, so that was perhaps a miscommunication just when we were talking last week about phased approaches. So in reality, we probably have something pledged but not in the bank, so to speak, of about half of that. So and even that's not absolute money in the bank. There's still things we need to do to assure that, but that's quite certain but not nailed down. But yeah, that article would be really nice if we can achieve that in the near term, but we're not quite there yet. Yeah, another. Yeah, absolutely. So any money pledged or donated or crowdfunded or debentured for this or in a project aimed at raising the funds for this will be for the stadium. There'll be no use of those funds for any other purpose other than delivering this stadium. Yes. Yeah, that's a great question. Will there be more academy days? Yeah, definitely. That's the aim. We're looking at really growing the academy, and we're speaking with the SACU and Sport Scotland to an extent how we can do that. But yeah, that's the aim. We want the academy to be there definitely every week and maybe more, but we can't promise anything for certain, but that's what we want to do. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that's a good question. Can we utilise any resources from Armadale in the fundraising efforts? Yes, we've kind of negotiated a situation where that will be mostly possible. A lot of what is at Armadale has been put in by the club as well, so those things are obviously available to either be a memento or, as you say, scrap metal, that kind of thing. It's possible, yep. Yes. Yeah, so can we host amateur days or training days, all of those types of things? Yeah, that's something we would like to do a lot of. Redcars and Scunthorpe are great models of that as a way of boosting club funds and opening the stadium up for anyone to use. So that's something we do plan to do a lot more of. Any other questions out there? Yeah, so Sport Scotland funding is quite limited and not the most accessible, but we are looking at how we can get some funding to support it. We're having that conversation. Yep. Yeah, allied vehicles and our good friends at Glasgow. You never know. We wouldn't say no to anyone that would wish to support us on our journey here. Anyone else? Yes. The pits, yep. So the pits are planned to be down in this corner. They're not. This is kind of the pits, but not the full extent of them. But that's the plan in this corner. They're not on the plan yet because the plan's still in the works. There's a few things that we want to do with them, so they'll be down in that corner. Any keen tractor drivers will be found up here, and there's still space on site for other things as well. Steve Lawson, we haven't spoken to Steve Lawson. We think we've got the resource to do it without him, but we'll see. We wouldn't say no to any help. He has been busy at Northside, certainly. Looks to have done a great job there, but we've not spoken to Steve Lawson. Yeah. Any other questions out there? Yeah. So what are the two white buildings behind this grandstand? So they're existing units on the site, so that if you drive down today, you'll see those two units sitting there. Yeah, and in some of the other drawings, you'll see another building up here, which is it's already there as well. So it just helps to kind of place the track in the landscape. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Biggest challenge is twofold, really. It's funding. I'd say we're getting there, but we'd really like an extra boost on the funding because it makes everything fall into place much more easily, and ultimately delivers the best facility we can, and that makes it easier to sell to supporters, and it helps the club in a huge way going forward. So funding is one big issue, and the other issue largely lies with the council. So ultimately they will need to decide that our case is best, and then move through the planning process with that. So we kind of see these as hurdles, but not roadblocks, certainly. What most excites me? That's a very good question. Well, I've been at it a long time, so what will most excite me is Heat 1 in May 2023. That's what I'm looking forward to. Any other? Yes. Well, there's no reason why we couldn't. Yeah, yep. We'll everything we'll lay out here will be of FIM standard, and then beyond that, there's questions of capacities and other capabilities that we'll need to have to host a Grand Prix. But why not? The sky's the limit, and that's a great option that we have on the site. Is that now we can develop it, we can grow it to grow with the club, and if that's our ambition, then why not? Any other? Yes. Yeah, well, largely it was dictated just by the site itself. So there's a lot of considerations that have gone into making this sort of the perfect site. Obviously, the smaller the site, the less you pay, and because everything's per acre. So the site itself is about 4 acres. So by being about 4 acres, you can fit in a good speedway track that comes up to FIM standards. So that dictated it to an extent. And also, the smaller the facility, the less funds you need to raise to do it. And I quite like the track. I think it'll be really good. I could go into more detail. The track that it's most similar to at the moment, although it's 260 metres, it isn't similar to Armadale at all. Other than being 260 metres, there's nothing else that's familiar, in a shale track, I suppose. But it's most similar to Redcar. So we're talking in the vein of Redcar, Glasgow, a small Bellevue. Those are the types of tracks that this is most similar to. Across the middle, it's 75 metres from fence to fence. Across here, end to end, it's 125 odd metres. The interesting bit is the width of the straights. They're 12.5 metres. I'll put all this into context. So 75 across the middle, Armadale is 59. So we're talking much wider across the middle. End to end, Armadale is about 135. I say 125, so it's slightly shorter end to end. Width of the straights, Armadale is about 9 metres in the straights. This is 12.5. Width of the bends, Armadale is about 12 to 13. This is 15. So we're talking a really wide track for really good racing. We're looking at doing great banking on it as well. So everything about it will be to have good racing. Yeah, starting gate will just be opposite the grandstand referee's box up the back there. Yes. Yeah. I don't know. Could we convince Josh to race at number 2? I'm not sure. Yeah, that'd be nice. I don't see any reason. The team as a whole have been fantastically supportive of what we're looking to do here. A lot of excitement, a lot of good questions from them. I'm sure they'll all love to race here. And obviously things happen in Speedway with points limits and whatever, but I don't see why we wouldn't want to have the best rider in the country in our team. So, yeah. It's hard to predict the future for British Speedway or ourselves, but I believe with everything that we do with the club, we want to be the best. You know, we want to have the best live stream, we want to have the best racing, we want to have the best spectator experience on the night. So if that means at some point we'll reach into the top league and have the best standard of racing and be the best team in the country, yeah, that's the aim. Yes. Yeah, there'll be much better pits. You won't need to clear the mud out of the way to put your bike out this time. That's the aim. Yeah, there'll be much better facilities for everyone. Any other questions out there? All right. Maybe. Yeah. Yeah. We're hoping it won't rain on this site. Who knows? I can't promise that one. Yeah. Yeah, so in speaking with, for example, Redcar, they bring in a lot of extra revenue from their training days and amateur meetings and everything else. So all these things will be additional revenue streams. Other uses of the site, anything that we can put into the site that won't be detrimental to what the club does as its core activity, we'd absolutely look at. Yeah.
I was more thinking about on race night.
Yeah. Certainly if there's any ideas on how we can increase our revenue on race nights, yeah. In terms of food and drink and everything like that, that would be money that will come to the club rather than previous situations or current situation where it might go to a stadium owner. All revenue from the site will come to the club, so that will be a big boost as well. Car park, food and drink, anything else, yeah. Yeah, obviously you can't predict what issues might come with the weather or whatever else, but yeah, we'll have a very keen eye on getting the site right, getting the track right. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So we wouldn't wish to have any trouble like Bellevue had in constructing their track. We'll keep a keen eye on it. Yeah. Anyone? Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So when the weather's being kind to us, the sun will come sort of from this angle, almost where you can see the sun coming now. So that essentially, if we're talking about how Armadale is angled for the setting sun, you're kind of racing down the back straight, looking dead into it. So how we're aligned here, it's kind of like that. So it won't be right into the eyes of the riders as they come into the corners, which is the worst bit. So we're at a better angle, and there are tall trees around it that will help. So yeah. Okay. Any other questions out there? No. Well, they've all been excellent questions, and thank you for everyone that has asked a question, and thank you for everyone that's come along tonight. We'll be around to answer any further questions that you might want to ask. So we've got brochures here which give a fuller picture, essentially what we ran through tonight. They give a lot of detail on that. They give the debenture options and the crowdfunding options. What we're looking for with those, if anyone would like to get involved, if they send us an email or contact the club in some way stating an interest, then we'll be in touch. And certainly with the crowdfunding options, we'll get a way up and running in the very near future how you can just actively buy that online to an extent and and that'll all be taken care of by our tech whiz. Yeah, he nods. So those things will come in time, and but certainly if anyone would like to support us, we'd be very grateful for your help. I think we can, or I know that the club can build a fantastic facility here, and it will allow the club to thrive well into the future, and that's absolutely what we want to do. So thank you everyone for coming.